Although we didn't advance, we maintained the existing pledge. It was still possible, as the phrase goes, to keep 1.5 degrees alive. COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh had two main highlights. The first one was that it maintained the ambition to keep global warming to a maximum of 1.5 degrees Celsius. Now, for a lot of people, this is a bit disappointing because it's just maintaining something that was already a pledge from 2015 Paris Agreement. In fact, there's been a lot of pressure from developing nations in particular to challenge this target because they have a legitimate aspiration to the comfort and ways of living of more developed nations. And in that path, they're still increasing emissions. And so, although we didn't advance, we maintained the existing pledge. It was still possible, as the phrase goes, to keep 1.5 degrees alive. The second highlight was about loss and damage. Now, what does this mean? It means that developed nations have recognized that they are responsible for the effects of their own process of industrialization, the greenhouse gas emissions that then created a number of climate change that then affected predominantly the global south, and these effects need to be compensated. So there has been a commitment to create a fund to compensate developing nations from the loss and damage from climate change. Now, this is a very positive advancement in this discussion. It's the first time this is recognized in this way, and it will hopefully help not only fight climate change, but help a lot of human populations deal with extreme weather events, as we've seen this year, like floods in Pakistan, many other situations. Now, that's really the only thing that was agreed upon. There's no agreement and no clarity about how much this fund will be exactly, who are the countries contributing to the fund, who are the countries receiving from the fund, what is the formula to pay and receive from this fund. So this is something that will take place in the years to come, the specific details of how this is implemented. Now, from a personal point of view, some observations of attending COP in Sharm el-Sheikh. You did see a lot more presence of African countries, of developing nations. But on the other hand, we also saw a lot of presence of oil exporting nations and oil and gas companies. In fact, there was a bit of a controversy because someone said, the media outlet said, that there were more delegates from oil and gas companies, from lobbyists from oil and gas, than delegates from small island nation states in the Pacific, which are, very much the first line of suffering from climate change. It's also interesting to me that we have nuclear back in the discussion. For many years, that was a little bit of a taboo and not really acceptable. And now we're seeing nuclear come back as a potential source of low carbon and dispatchable energy. And personally, I also missed the excitement of the protests. There was a lot less presence of climate activists and protests than, for example, last year in Glasgow, than this year. Now, what can we expect for the future? Next year, COP28 will be held in the United Arab Emirates. It's already interesting to see how a COP that is being held in a region that is traditionally an oil exporting region, how is that going to play into the themes of the COP? It has an important theme as well, which is assessment. So we will be taking stock of the actual consequences of all the pledges that the nations have been making in the stadiums. And I think that's very important because it really means governments need to take responsibility for what they commit to, and we need to course correct because we are not heading towards a world of under 1.5 degrees global warming. It will also be interesting to see how the details of these loss and damage funds are discussed and decided upon. There is a kind of a very important detail that will determine outcomes of this fund, which is the date at which the measurement of accumulated emissions is set. Because if we set it in 1990, that is before China, for example, had gone through its industrialization process, and so it would be, let's say, a net receiver of the fund. But if we account for accumulated emissions today, then of course China today is the world's largest emitter, and it would be a net contributor to this fund. So there'll be lots of discussions and controversy about how exactly this should play out. Now, if you would like to know the implications for business of all these decisions, watch the next video.